Welcome to this explainer. Today we're unpacking some truly groundbreaking research from Professor R.J. Starr. It's a phenomenon that, honestly, might explain almost everything about how we interact with each other today. We're going to look really closely at how our brains are literally rewiring themselves to anticipate threats before a single word is even consciously processed.
Okay, let's just dive right into this. I want to start with a question I know we've all been feeling lately. Why does every conversation, whether it's online or sitting across the dinner table, feel like an absolute battlefield? You know what I mean, right? That instant, undeniable tension the second a new topic comes up. Well, to understand why we're all so exhausted, we actually have to look past the topics we're debating and look at the invisible psychological filter we're using to process them.
Which brings us to Section 1, the invisible defensive filter.
Dr. Starr calls this invisible filter adversarial interpretation. It's defined as a cognitive affective posture, where ambiguity is habitually processed through anticipatory opposition, defensive suspicion, and hostile decoding. Now, in plain English, imagine bracing for a physical punch before anyone has even raised a hand. It's this structural readiness to strap on heavy armor before you even know if you're in a fight. It's a foundational posture that happens before actual thought. You aren't reacting to an attack, you are anticipating one.
Now, notice the stark contrast here between normal critical thinking and an adversarial posture. Critical thinking is oriented toward truth, clarity, and understanding the nature of a claim. It's skeptical, sure, but it's open. You're trying to figure out what a claim actually means. But an adversarial posture, completely different ballgame. It's oriented away from things, specifically away from manipulation, humiliation, and ideological contamination. So you aren't trying to learn or synthesize new information, your brain is just frantically trying to protect its territory from an invader.
So, when you hear clinical phrases like hostile decoding and defensive suspicion, you might logically ask, well, has society just become clinically paranoid? Are we all just imagining enemies hiding in the bushes waiting to jump out at us?
The absolute crucial point here is that this isn't personal paranoia. True paranoia is organized around personal persecution, feeling specifically targeted by directed malice. Adversarial interpretation is entirely different. It's organized around epistemic contamination and positional threat. Essentially, it's a socially normalized fear of losing your ideological ground. And honestly, the scariest part? The adversarial interpreter usually feels totally rational. They view their hostility not as a flaw, but as a super sophisticated necessary defense against a hostile world.
Let's move on to Section 2, the brain's threat machinery. So how does this actually play out inside our heads? Well, it operates as a continuous four-step reinforcing cycle. Step 1. Your brain's schema activates a threat prediction. Step 2, that prediction directs hostile attribution, meaning you automatically assume the speaker has a bad motive. Step 3, that assumption triggers your identity protection mechanisms, so you push back. And finally, Step 4, the entire system reinforces the initial schema. Your brain predicts a threat, attributes malice to totally harmless ambiguity, protects your identity, and then completely locks that bias in for the very next encounter.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 3. The digital amplification engine.
Of course, these internal brain mechanisms do not exist in a vacuum. Our digital systems act like massive megaphones for this exact psychology. Platforms actively optimize for outrage and threat-relevant content because, let's face it, that's exactly what drives engagement. And because of social media, interpretation is now a public, identity-signaling performance. You don't just privately read an article anymore, you perform your reaction to it for your tribe. Meanwhile, our epistemic trust in institutions has severely eroded. The result? Reading someone charitably is now literally punished as a social risk, or it's just seen as sheer naivety by your own community.
This incredibly toxic environment produces what researchers call affective polarization. This means disliking, distrusting, and negatively orienting toward outgroup members at the level of raw emotion, completely independently of any actual policy disagreement. We instinctively hate and distrust other groups before we've even assessed their actual beliefs. We don't even need to know what they think to know that we oppose them. The feeling of opposition comes way before the facts.
Okay, moving to Section 4, what we actually lose.
Living in this chronic state of positional vigilance is metabolically exhausting. It physically stresses our nervous systems. But the true tragedy is what it structurally forecloses in our minds. When we live in this defensive reality, core human capacities simply vanish. We lose curiosity without defensiveness. We lose the ability to have admiration without submission, meaning we can't praise a good idea from someone we disagree with without feeling like we're somehow surrendering to them. We lose disagreement without threat, and we lose our tolerance for ambiguity without panic. Literally everything unknown becomes an immediate, hidden danger.
The richer registers of experience are filtered out not by malice, but by structure. Our psychological reality is narrowed so dramatically that language just becomes pure strategy. Ideas are encountered only as positions to be attacked or defended. People stop being actual, nuanced human beings navigating a complex world and become just flat, cardboard representatives of threatening positions.
Now for the final part, Section 5, Reclaiming Interpretive Generosity.
So how on earth do we fix this? Well, to break this recursive psychological trap, we have to change our foundational posture. We must reclaim what Dr. Starr calls interpretive generosity. This is the default extension of charitable reading to ambiguous communications. It recognizes that the most adversarial reading is not necessarily the most accurate one. Now, to be perfectly clear, this is not about suspending critical thought or just being gullible. It's simply allowing for the possibility that an ambiguous statement might just be a genuine attempt to articulate something complex, or maybe just an honest mistake, rather than a malicious attack.
Professor Starr points out a really critical trap in modern discourse. The cynicism that presents itself as the end point of critical thought may be the abandonment of it. Performing sophisticated suspicion doesn't automatically make you smart. Always assuming everyone has a hidden agenda doesn't mean you're a genius. It often just means your mind is closed to genuine understanding. Cynicism is incredibly easy, you guys. True critical thought, that takes patience and real effort.
I want to leave you with this provocative thought to ponder. If your interpretive posture is organized around anticipating threats, what parts of reality are you no longer capable of seeing? Examine your own interpretive habits and ask what genuine understanding you might be sacrificing just to feel intellectually safe. If you're always looking for a threat, what beautiful nuance, what potential connection are you completely blind to? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I challenge you to practice just a little more interpretive generosity today.